The number one thing that I lose sleep at night about now, how do I not mess up my kids? Someone asked me the question once, what do I miss the most? My immediate response is I miss my desperation. When I didn't have a choice. There were people depending upon me at those periods of time, and that's honestly what pulled me through.
You start your company in 2016, and in 4 years, you go from near death to something that it's not even believable what you were able to do.
I don't think she knew that within the first 90 days of being married to me, I was going to blow our lives up. The last 10 years especially has been the most tumultuous roller coaster I can ever have imagined. I went from being on a high to being at my absolute lows. And I would tell you that parallels the journey of being an entrepreneur. I'll give my wife a lot of credit because she endured the roller coaster with me. We got married in April of 2016. I decided to leave Morgan Stanley May of 16 and launch the RIA of June of 16. I don't think she knew when she married me that within the first 90 days of being married to me, I was going to blow our lives up. Admittedly, when I did it, I didn't really think I was blowing our lives up, but what I've learned with this journey, though, is successful people have very common attributes. And whether the pathway is within a bigger organization that you create a lot of value and you create a lot of wealth, or you do your own thing, all of them have resourcefulness, all of them have resiliency, all of them have grit. There's other ones, of course, but like the common attributes that I see with success, there's a story. And one of my favorite parts about being in communities like R360 or Tiger 21 or any of those is you get to hear these stories that are just so impactful, so profound, but they all have this underlying theme, similar characteristics of individuals. But even related to that, it's the value creation conversation.
When you're literally knocked out and on the floor, how do you personally get up? Is it something spiritual? Is it just something innate? Do you have strategies?
I've been reflecting a lot on this as I'm now kind of on the other side. And someone asked me the question once, what do I miss the most? My immediate response is I miss my desperation. I missed when I didn't have a choice. There were people that were depending upon me at those periods of time. And that's honestly what pulled me through. And I've seen a lot of these conversations around discipline and motivation. Like you have to have discipline in order to be able to have success or create the right habits. But it all starts with whatever the motivation is, having that driving purpose that's bigger than yourself. For me, it was actually my kids, my clients, my employees, like all of those were the reasons to continue to do what I was doing.
You have three children, right?
Yep.
McKenna, Peyton, Landon.
That's right. Yeah. And we're in the thick of it. They're all pretty young.
How old are they now?
8, 7, and 2.
Wow. You're definitely in the thick of it. What's incredible about your story is, you start your company in 2016 and basically are near death in 2020. And in 4 years, you go from near death to something that it's not even believable what you were able to do. Talk to us about that journey, because what most impressed me is how hyper niche you are, which is a great lesson to focus on one client and just knock it out of the park.
Yeah. So, to give context, in 2020, we were at 600 million in assets and we grew to over 3 billion, all organically, no M&A. And it was just staying super, super focused on the niche that we're in. And what we do is we educate individuals that work at companies that have defined benefit plans and company stock in their 401ks. And that's our niche.
You had a partner buyout that you had to deal with, and those things can be tough.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a very challenging period of time. It was my dad. So add in a personal element that was not always great. I mean, it's still my dad. I love my dad, but the reality of it is on a business side, it was not good for, I'm not going to speak for him, but it was not good for me. And I have to imagine it wasn't good for him either in other different ways. But, in the nature of the regulated space that we're in and how important our reputations are as you're managing people's livelihoods, there was a line that just could never be crossed. And so that's what ultimately led to, I would almost kind of dub it a hostile takeover. That whole series of negotiations and conversations lasted almost 2 years. You want to talk about huge distraction. Came to an agreement in 2019, and then the pandemic happened, and all the bank financing we had lined up went away real fast. Revenue hit was hit by 30% in the first quarter of 2020, like any advisory firm, right? So
Right.
we were in this period of time where I had to make some really difficult decisions in a ton of uncertainty. So I pushed through. I continued to go, and I had three banks lined up to facilitate the buyout. And very quickly, two of them just said they didn't even have capacity to talk to us about the buyout simply because of the PPP loans that they were doing at the time.
Right.
Fortunately, I had one more bank that was still in place, and they were able to get the loan done. We closed, and so a lot of times I will say, May 28th of 2020 is the true inception date of Bogart Wealth, because that was at the point when it was 100% owned by me. Now, interestingly enough, I didn't realize this, but I actually took my net worth negative when I did that buyout. I overpaid.
Yeah.
And the only reason it worked financially, and I could say this now because I'm for sure on the other side of it, but the only reason it worked financially was because the loan that I put in place to buy him out was interest only for the first 12 months. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had any cash flow to live on.
Right.
When I come back to that comment about desperation and like having to do it, I was so emotionally charged about getting that transaction completed that I didn't fully appreciate the consequences of the amount of leverage I was putting on myself and my family. But it had to be done. Like there was no pathway forward for Bogart Wealth at that time. And it was one of those things where the friction between the two of us was just so toxic and cancerous for the business. I don't know if our clients ever noticed it, to be candid, but I definitely know some of our employees did.
Right.
It was something that we had to do.
There's people here that are in a family business considering jumping from college into a family business. My dad was a doctor, and that wasn't going to be my path. I went to work with my then father-in-law, who has since passed, and he was a tough SOB. Both his sons had been with him. Both sons left. Both sons told me not to do it, but my dad was a really tough guy. And I said, there's nobody that's going to be worse. Plus, the guy operated like 2 or 3 public companies simultaneously. I knew I was going to learn a lot, but I structured it in a way. And in my head, I'm like, hey, I want to go here for 3 years. It'll be like my MBA from the School of Hard Knocks. And then I'll go do my own thing, which is exactly what I did. What advice would you give to people process wise? Because oftentimes you're going into an in-law business, you're married, or you're going into your parents' business with siblings. What advice would you have to structure a relationship that is fair and keeps them out of trouble?
I'll admit the emotional wounds aren't fully healed here on my side to be able to be completely objective. My immediate thought was don't do it. But no, the reality of it is there's a lot of examples, and I've watched some of your other podcasts where there was no choice other than the kids to take on that role. The thing I would say is it has to be structured in a manner where there's separation between the personal relationship and the professional relationship. In my case, we lost the father-son element for a long period of time, and we're working to repair that.
Let me come at a different angle. You have 3 children. Let's say 2 of them have absolutely no interest in your business. They want to go do their own thing. But one of them actually loves finance, goes to one of these great schools, maybe even UVA, gets their CFP, and now they want to come work with dad. Looking at like what happened to you, and obviously also being fair to all of your children, if only one of them's in the business, how would you think about that?
I wouldn't do it. I would invest in my kids starting their own business. I would leverage the relationships that I have to get them on a pathway that is going to absolutely enhance their success. But admittedly, there's no world where if my kids, Bogart Wealth is an enterprise at this point, and fast forward to 20 years from now when they would even be able to come into it, we're going to be 10 times the size and even more.
What if they said, I want to set up my own firm, but what if I work at yours for 2 or 3 years, get some experience, and then you help me figure out how I set up my own firm? Would you do that?
100%. Yeah. And that's where I was going with this. But the reality is I wouldn't put them in a position where they're on the executive leadership team. They would get a job and they would learn everything that I've built. It wouldn't be a partnership. They would have governance and structure around it. Now, by the way, I would tell you vicariously, like I'm already thinking of ways, my kids are still very young, to instill the work ethic, the values that I embody, ultimately this value creation concept. My wife and I are both reading the book Value Creation Kid. And we're teaching them now at ages 8 and 7 ways to create value, not only in their lives, our families' lives, and then other people's lives, so that they can start thinking. And because at the end of the day, I would try to humbly say, I could take what we've built at Bogart Wealth and apply it in a lot of different industries, because this isn't about necessarily being a financial advisory firm. I personally believe a financial advisor's job is to solve people's problems, and a really, really good advisor can put themselves in a position to anticipate what your problems are going to be before they actually happen. That same mindset and skill set can be applied in so many different industries. So this is where the value creation element has different components associated with how you're creating that value for an individual. But at the end of the day, the root underpinnings of what an advisor does, and frankly, I'd say anyone in a service capacity, it's to solve people's problems.
The value creation kit, it's a theme that our 360 members struggle with. And the struggle is, wow, I look at my career, all this stuff that then created my success. I have 4 kids, and you want to make their life easy, right? And what you're doing is you're basically handicapping them and chopping their legs off, because it's the struggle that creates the resilience.
This is the number one thing that I lose sleep at night about now. How do I not mess up my kids?
And you're thinking about it at the right time, because if all of a sudden you're thinking about this and your kids are in your 20s, you're screwed.
Oh, it's done. The ages my kids are at their formative years. And with the journey, the wealth creation's been relatively new. Like, even at an individual level, I sometimes don't acknowledge or accept where I am.
How are you thinking through it with your own kids?
So, I start with gratitude. You could take all the woo-woo comments or everything else. Like, every single morning, the first thing I do before I even touch my phone or brush my teeth is just acknowledge one thing I'm grateful for. Candidly, some mornings it's that I'm getting out of bed, right? Like, but it starts with gratitude. Ashley and I have been very, very diligent about instilling that into our children so that they hear that day in and day out. We have so many things to be grateful for. Now, I'll recognize too that they're still at the age that it's not fully registering. Like, they're not really registering the difference that they have relative to some of their peers. I'm very philanthropic as well. So I've also started incorporating some of the things that we are doing as a family to give back and help others.
What are the things that you and Ashley like to give to that really get you going?
Naturally, education, right? I've set up endowment programs at a couple different places at this point. So that's been the primary. I have a huge soft spot for single mothers. My parents divorced when I was very young, and my mom was a very big part of my upbringing. So I do a lot of things to advocate and support for single mothers. Again, usually it's around setting up scholarships or some type of aid program.
Is your mom still alive?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Very close to mom.
So she's probably pretty damn proud of young James.
I think for all of us, we're still having a hard time acknowledging, like, I just, like, I'm a normal guy, right? Like anybody else.
Yeah. But you're a normal guy that not only worked your ass off, and now you're well educated. And I will say that in R360, I love that we have 15 members now that didn't go to college. 9 didn't graduate from high school, and 5 of the 9 are billionaires, which is fascinating because I'm way overeducated. I would say you and I fit in that same category. It just shows you it's not about the education, it's about other things. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that took me a while to figure out as a serial entrepreneur is you need to have a very disciplined process to grow and scale your business. I don't care what business it is. You went from, call it 500 million, just to be round numbers, to over 3 billion. You don't do that unless you have a repeatable system that you work your butt off. What was that for you? What was that repeatable process?
I would probably say, to start, you have to be intentional about the decision around growth. Especially in my industry, a lot of advisors, they talk about wanting to grow, but they don't have any type of associated process, systems, et cetera. Growth, it's a decision that has consequences.
Yes.
Right? Like, if you're simply just saying, I want to grow without any type of purpose associated with it, then you're on hope. And hope's not a strategy.
I just interviewed Don Wenner. He's been married for like 13 years. 2 years ago, last time I talked to him, he'd only been 6 nights away from his wife.
I'm so jealous.
Now it's up to 16. Tell us about what you had to do in terms of that separation from Ashley.
Oh my God, it's still happening, right? Like, my family unquestionably has paid the price for the success. We have office locations in different states. So, Ashley and the kids, they live in Virginia, and that's where our corporate headquarters is, but I live in Texas, right? So I'm on a plane Sunday through Thursday almost every week, even still, right? Now the trips are changing a little bit, to be clear, but when we were building it, the revenue generation and the opportunity that we had around the business development engines that we had built and scaled were all in Texas. And it was creating this pull that I had to be in Texas to go down and meet with clients, meet with prospective clients, do new lead flow, different types of lead flow engines. And all of that was this pull that was creating this environment where I was gone all the time.
I mean, that is a decision. You just said you want to grow your company and be big, and you discover a golden goose, which I want to get into in your case. You have to make a conscious decision. Your spouse has to be on board, and being away from your children 4 or 5 nights is a big sacrifice.
We're feeling that now, right? And the kids are now at the age that they fully recognize when I'm gone. My 7 and my 8-year-old, they both, they give the daggers, right? Where it's like,
yeah,
why are you leaving again? Why do you have to constantly go? And, early on, it was coming back to that desperation. Like, I had to do it. Now I'm like, it gets harder and harder as they are pulling at you.
You could say, look, I'm going to write a very big check and I'm going to find somebody that's not me, but it's pretty close, and I can train them to kind of be me. And it's worth me stroking this big check so I can be with my family.
Absolutely. And so, admittedly, we're working on that. But this is an environment from a staffing perspective. You talk about building this stuff out.
Yeah.
It has been so difficult to staff, especially when, and some of this is me and me letting go. But when I think about managing people's lives, they're placing a tremendous amount of trust in us to be able to do that for them. It's not like I can just get a 22-year-old that's right out of school, teach them a few things, and then boom, they're able to do it. That it's just not. So when I think about the infrastructure that had to be grown, I mean, we went from 12 employees in 2020 to 56 now. And,
Wow.
All of that was infrastructure enhancements and scaling and building systems, building processes. We went from a very horizontal organization to going vertical super quickly. Coming back to the earlier question, I think culture is the growth engine. Really making those investments back into culture. I'm going to steal it from one of the other podcasts that you shared with me. The Chinese proverb that if you want to grow fast, do it yourself. If you want to go far, do it with others, right? And that's the reality of building an organization that gets big.
What is special about your culture and what makes it so difficult to find? Because you have to find the people. Not everybody fits in the culture you want to create.
Well, so I think it's finding people that are able to work with you now, but they're also going to be able to grow with you in the future. I would kind of use the analogy of we're a rocket ship. It's a high performance machine, and you need to be having people who are aligned with that. Now, when I think about what we've done, we have this hiring of alignment, but we are very clear on our mission, our vision, our purpose, our core values, and those are how we make the decisions.
When you have values, it becomes the filter for making decisions, for hiring people. Every meeting, we start with our values: honor, entrepreneurial grit, excellence, curiosity, joy, generosity, spirit. Finding those type of people in this culture and what you're trained in school these days
Bingo.
is really, really difficult.
I couldn't have said it better. The amount of individuals, they can't even take educational constructive feedback on how to improve just their job function, let alone anything that enters into the realm of personal.